Hi guys, so I'm super excited for this video because it's a new kind of video. I got to talk to the composer Dennis Luginbill, and we're playing his Symphony Number 1 as the JMU Symphony Orchestra, and I got to hear all kinds of comments about his interpretations, where the three movements came from, and all kinds of cool stuff. So make sure that you watch this video because you're going to hear all kinds of insight that you may not have thought of before, and we are premiering this piece in February, so make sure to come out to that event. I will put the link down in the description and all the details that you will need if you want to come visit us and hear the show. It's nice to put a face to your name. We've heard so many great things about you, and I really love your piece. It's actually my favorite piece in our program, so thank you for agreeing to talk with me today.
You're too kind, David. What do you play?
I'm a violist.
Oh, great.
Yeah, thank you. What is your, you teach in a public school?
I do. Yeah, I teach at a middle school now.
Awesome. Do you teach band, orchestra?
At this position, I teach band.
Okay.
Yeah, I have taught orchestra. This is my 27th year of teaching.
Wow.
And that's where I met Dr. Byers, actually. He was a undergraduate student when I was teaching at UW-Eau Claire.
Ooh.
And he was one of my trumpet students. And got to know him really well, and he was just this phenomenal talent, and have just been lucky to call him a friend ever since.
That's so cool. I love him. He's a great director.
Oh yeah, phenomenal conductor.
So, I'm curious about your piece here, the Symphony Number 1. What kind of story does this tell? Where did it come? Where was it inspired from?
Well, about 15 years ago, I read. I've always been a big fantasy fan, and I read the Shakespeare and just loved it. And I thought at that time, I think I could write a piece based on this book. And so kind of kicked around some ideas, and in 2009 I actually contacted Terry Brooks, the author of The Sword of Shannara, and asked if I could write at that time it was just a piece based on his books. And he said, sure, go ahead and do it. He was super nice, and his response was funny. He said something like, well, I don't know, why you want to do it, but go ahead, that kind of thing. So anyway, I worked on the piece. I had actually two other commissions to write it, and they both kind of fell apart. And Foster has really been very supportive of my compositions over the years. So I asked him, I said, I would love to write this piece for your orchestra. And he said, well, let's figure out a way to make it happen. And so long story short, that's how it came to be. But really worked very hard on it the last probably 6 months, scoring it and finishing it up and that kind of thing. So I can't wait to hear you guys play it. It's going to be so fun. I've only heard it on my computer at home, really. So the first recordings that Foster's sending, you guys are really a good orchestra. It's going to be amazing.
I'm curious. Now, these movements, I'm guessing, are based off of events in the book. Do you remember?
That's correct. Yeah.
In the shadow of the Warlock Lord. I'm curious why you chose these specific events.
Well, to tell you the truth, they were just picked really out of convenience, because one of the things that Terry Brooks did a number of years ago to make his first book more accessible is and this is accessible to like younger readers, he took the book, which is about 800 pages, and broke it into 3 parts for young readers so they could read it as like it's a trilogy. So I basically used the names of those books that he came up with for each section of the book. Now, I found that really helpful in just focusing my writing. In retrospect, I looked at it before he had done that. I actually went through the entire book and came up with like a feeling tone and a mood for most of the scenes. And then I determined that to write a symphony based on that, this piece would have been like another Ring cycle. It would have been way too long, So anyway, I just used the kind of the subtitles or the titles of those sections of the book that Terry Brooks came up with.
What is your process for composing? Like, Do you start with a chord progression? Did you have a melody in mind?
So normally I'll come up with either a progression and then a melody to follow, or I'll come up with some melodic motives and things and then develop those. Uh, the larger pieces that I've written, like this one, and I've written a few other orchestra pieces that are multi-movement or longer, I'll come up with like a plan or a design, so I really know where I'm going before I get there. It just helps me write a little bit more efficiently and kind of keeps me on track, or so to speak. But much of this piece is actually, I think I came up with melodic concepts first, and then kind of went from there. But it really varies. You could almost go theme by theme, or motive by motive in the symphony, and say, oh, okay, in that particular instance, like the first statement of the Warlock Lord in the beginning with the trumpets and trombones, when you guys are playing like sustained patterns. I think the violas actually have one of them, like some vor imitation of a motive to come, where you're playing with some low winds and stuff like that. But the brass statement is just a fragment of the Warlock theme, horribly disfigured, like harmonically. But that was one of the first sounds I came up with for the symphony, probably 10 years ago.
Yeah, I definitely see that stuff you were talking about, how it's disfigured harmonically. There's some pretty wild stuff in the viola part. Did you? So, what is your primary instrument?
My primary instrument is trumpet and then piano. I'm not much of a string player, but I love the strings. In fact, you probably notice the strings are playing like almost all the time. And I love the viola. So I know sometimes in some pieces the viola can be, maybe more of a accompanying or harmonic, very important part, but it might not get as much melody. So I tried to give everybody some melody, and I love the sound of the viola section. Mr. Byers mentioned you guys had a particularly strong viola section, so that's nice too, to be able to write for you guys. I try to write to your strengths as an orchestra as much as possible. And I kind of lucked out with the trombone soloist. That player sounds fantastic, even in the read through, because he has a prominent solo in the end of the second movement. So that's going to be fun to hear that. And you read through the third movement today, right?
We do. I'm
I
excited.
can't wait to hear that.
It's so. Did you take any inspirations from film music? Because this kind of sounds. It doesn't sound like any film music in particular, but the how lush the chords are in some spots and how expanded across the orchestra it is. It kind of reminds me of film music.
No, I I've always wanted to write something for film. I've written for TV a little bit. I primarily written for school groups. Short answer, I love film music. I study film scores, and just I think it's probably one of the best ways to introduce the general public and young people to orchestral music. I think it's so sweeping and exciting, and really this piece in a way is kind of meant to be like a soundtrack for that book. And I mentioned to Foster, maybe he told you guys, but the on Netflix right now they're doing the Shannara Chronicles, I think they call it, and it's based on Terry Brooks' second book in the series called Elfstones of Shannara, and it's a great book too. The first three books are phenomenal that he wrote, and he's got probably 20 books in the series. So if you like reading fantasy, I've read about 13 and just haven't really got to the other ones, but they're really well done. He really creates a rich landscape, which lends itself well, I think, to a composition. And so that was kind of my thought when I was writing the music. I was picturing characters and events in the book. So it's really kind of, maybe, does that make me a modern composer? I don't know. I think maybe even the greats, when they were writing in the classical period, maybe they were pondering something like that at times. But yeah. So That's kind of how I perceived some of those things. I'm thrilled. You think it sounds like that? I'd hope people would see some imagery. And do you read a lot yourself, David?
I wish I did. I try to when I have time.
So thanks a lot. I look forward to meeting you, David. And
Oh yeah, same to you.
let me know if you have any other questions. And thanks again for playing the piece. It's going to be a hoot. You guys have a pretty large viola section, huh?
There's 10 of us this cycle, or 11.
That is
11.
awesome.
It's an odd number.
That's awesome. That's really great. Very, very cool. Well, hey, you take care of yourself, and good luck to you, and we'll look forward to seeing you.
Thank you. I'll see you later.
All right, have a good one.
You too. Bye.
Bye.